millions of years, nature has created, shaped, and reshaped the Missouri Ozarks. Mellow with the beauty of great age, this oldest mountain range offers much of interest to the visitor. It is a geological wonderland of springs, rivers, and deep limestone caverns, and presents as well a fascinating variety of plant, animal, and bird life. At times, tumbling down tree-shaded rapids. At times, cradled between towering bluffs. The Current and Jack's Fork rivers carry their transparent blue and green waters toward the sea. Unspoiled, unpolluted, natural and free-flowing.
A dedicated group of Missouri conservationists realized these pure spring waters might not always remain so. They had watched deterioration of land and the unwarranted pollution of rivers elsewhere, and felt that soon restoration and preservation of this riverway might no longer be possible. Thus, its beauty and usefulness would be gone forever. Rather than lose this wonderful resource, these conservationists were determined to meet President Johnson's challenge. He said, "Our land will be attractive tomorrow only if we organize for action and rebuild and reclaim the beauty we inherited. Our stewardship will be judged by the foresight with which we carry out these programs." It is to their credit that a far-sighted Congress authorized the Current and Jack's Fork to be set aside as America's first National Scenic Riverways, to be administered by the National Park Service, so that they may be used and enjoyed by present and future generations. For the next few moments, we are going to visit the beauties and wonders that await you along the riverways. Our guide will be Leonard, internationally known naturalist, author, and cinematographer, who will share with us his film and a lifetime of Ozark experience. Leonard, would you like to tell us something about the making of the film Forever Yours?
Well, Vernon, I think I'm going to let the film speak for itself. I would like to say, however, that we have been floating Current River and Jack's Fork for 40 years, and that on many of these trips, our cameras and recorders have gone along with us with results which you are going to see and hear. This is the story of the oldest land on our continent, where sparkling rivers like our Current and Jack's Fork run down valleys that are picturesque and wild. If one were to choose a form of wildlife to typify the area, it might well be the great pileated woodpecker, which has made its peace with man's civilization and learned to live in the second growth forest. These birds build high up in dead trees along the river bank and here raise their families of 1 or 2 or very rarely 3 youngsters. This nest had one baby whom we named Donald Duck, and who sat all day with his head thrust from the nesting hole, calling for food. Then the parent birds would come in from one side or the other, each with a crop full of grubs dug from some other dead tree, to stuff the little fellow full, for he had a tremendous appetite. The feeding process is a vigorous one, as is the case with many birds feeding their young. And now, if you will watch carefully, when the mother's crop is empty, you will see her snake-like tongue flashing in and out. In the old days, it was a common sight to see the river folk poling their john boats up or downstream, as our old friend and fishing guide Tom Moss is doing here. Until very recently, the river served as a highway for visiting and often for going to town. When wild geese follow these waterways during spring and autumn, they look down on mountain cabins nestled in the hollows. If there is a power line, the washing machine and television aerial are in evidence. Otherwise, kerosene lamps and wash tubs suffice. But always at the river landing are the John boats, for the streams are still the highways to the river people. Once, youngsters crossed by boat on their way to the little one-room schools, for there were few roads and no school buses. As they crossed, they watched the belted kingfisher, most expert of diving birds, who rarely misses when he sets his sights on an unwary minnow. Although the old days are passing, John boats are still used for local visiting. Long ago, we found that one best to see the Ozarks is to load your canoe and camp gear aboard the car and drive to the river for a delightful float of several days downstream. Along the back roads, you ford many small creeks, since bridges are few and far between. And so we come to the low water bridge at Cedar Grove, head of canoe navigation on the current river. Water runs under this bridge at normal flow, but over it in time of flood. Set the canoe into the river, load our gear aboard, and are off on an always new adventure. A neighbor who lives near the river will drive our car back to his farmhouse, and 3 days from now we'll bring it some 50 miles downstream to meet us. The friends who have joined us for this float get their canoe loaded first and head downstream, fishing as they go. Meanwhile, Jenny ties on a lure which may persuade a smallmouth bass to strike, and as we drift along, she will drop this into every swirl and pocket where a hungry bass might be waiting for his dinner. And so we float through the summer morning, down still pools and through swift rapids that are the delight of the canoeman's heart. Not far downstream is one of the primitive ferries which still furnish cross-river transportation for the traveler. These operate by river power. A cable is stretched across the stream on which runs a pulley, and through this pulley, a cable runs to each end of the boat. To cross in this direction, you simply shorten this end of the cable, drop the back end downstream, and the current brings you across. To return, you reverse the process. As for us, we push on down the river. Along the banks in early May, dogwood covers the hillside, crowning glory of the Ozark spring with its creamy white four-petaled blossoms. In moist hollows, rare wildflowers bloom like this yellow lady slipper, one of 30 orchids which blossoms in the Ozark Highland each spring. Many young creatures are abroad on this sunny morning, like the little chipmunk, which comes out of its den beneath a white oak root. And not far away is the spotted fawn and the white-tailed deer, hidden in the mayapples, while the mother has gone out to browse nearby. There are many deer to be seen along the riverways. Here, too, are small fur bearers like the raccoon. He is an omnivore, which is to say he eats everything. Excellent fisherman, expert harvester of fruits of the forest, eater of meat when he finds it, he also raids the farmer's garden when sweet corn is ripening. Next, we discover a family of fox kits, valuable rodent control animals, although they will also take a bird when they can catch it, even including the farmer's young broilers. The horned owl is a true predator, an eater of live meat. Although his diet consists mainly of wood rats and mice, he will take any unwary bird or small fur bearer that comes his way. This is, of course, a baby horned owl, born perhaps in February, for the owl is the earliest of nesting birds. Just feathering out, he will soon be a wing in the summer night to do his own hunting. Plainly, he is puzzled by the music of the frogs, which he has never heard before. As for the fox kits, they have games like any other youngsters and play tag and prisoner's base all through the spring day. Soon, however, they too will be out hunting on their own. We round a bend and surprise a green heron, most expert frogger on the river. He sees a small frog basking in the sunshine, drops down, and conducts a stalk he will agree would do justice to an Indian. But some sixth sense tells the frog there's danger in the offing, and in the nick of time, he jumps. Next, we discover the remains of a cluster of eggs of the fowler's toad clinging to a blade of grass in the shallows. These are the eggs that didn't hatch. And here are the tadpoles that did hatch, basking happily in the warm shallows. Not all of them, luckily, will grow to adulthood, or the world would have room for nothing except fowler's toads. Then we discover other forms of amphibian life in the warm shallows. Two meadow frogs sitting like Chinese mandarins beneath their arrowhead umbrellas. And the green-headed bullfrog, a larger member of the tribe with a larger voice. Next, the leopard frog, distinguished by his bronze stripes and spots. And finally, old Renicate's Piana, the black bullfrog, biggest of the family, and of course the one with the biggest voice. Most streams are born as tiny brooks, but not our current river. Its source is Montauk Springs, flowing 60 million gallons a day to create a full-grown river. Here, the state of Missouri maintains a big trout hatchery to create a worthwhile recreational resource. On a dead snag, the red-tailed hawk perches for hours, alert for any mouse, lizard, or grasshopper that may come his way. And so we come to one of the great springs which feeds these rivers. This is Alley Spring on Jack's Fort, flowing nearly 100 million gallons each 24 hours. Rising from limestone caverns deep underground, the water emerges in a pool so still it is impossible to credit its volume until it breaks over the lip of the pool and rushes down to join the river a quarter-mile away. In early times, most big springs along the Ozark rivers powered grist mills to grind the flour and cornmeal for farmers in the valley. Alley Spring was no exception, and this mill, now restored, serves as a museum. Next is Blue Spring, called by the Osages Spring of the Summer Sky, and considered by many the most beautiful on our continent. And so we float through the late afternoon beneath the towering bluffs, and hear a pack of Ozark hounds running a red fox high overhead. Dusk falls, and we search for a campsite on some breeze-swept gravel bar so as not to be caught on the river after dark. And now we beach and unload the canoe, pitch the tent, and light the cooking fire, and it will not be long until supper is ready. Fish caught during the day help make the evening meal. No better eating anywhere than smallmouth bass caught in a cold Ozark stream and cooked on the gravel bar over a wood fire. Then darkness steals over camp, and we may bait up with a fat chub minnow and cast out into the deep pool in hope of catching a wall-eyed pike for breakfast. Then a full moon tops the bluff across the river, and the barred owls start calling. This is old Eight-Hooter, most musical member of the owl family, quite easy to imitate. I well recall one night we camped at the mouth of Big Creek, and a barred owl started calling. We answered, and it wasn't long before we had a dozen owls lined up along the river bank, and we didn't get a wink of sleep all night. Then the owl heads out into the forest, and the insects and frogs take up the chorus of the summer night as the moon climbs higher. And suddenly, from a giant sycamore behind camp, we hear another call, the hunting call of the great horned owl, which has been truly called the terror of the midnight woods. This fellow is a carnivore, an eater of live meat. Although his quarry consists chiefly of wood rats and mice, he will take any small furred or feathered creature that comes his way. But he too goes about his hunting, and the chorus of whippoorwills tunes up. As for us, it has been a long day, and we spread our bedrolls beneath the stars. The moon climbs steadily higher, but we do not stay awake to watch her. Morning comes all too soon as the sun rises behind our camp. Down on the river, it is a different story. Here, mist hangs heavy and may not burn away for an hour or two. As for us, we're ready for a hearty breakfast and dip our coffee water from the river. We have a recipe for camp coffee. Put in a couple more tablespoons than you do at home and boil it until you think it's done. Then take the lid off the pot and put the camp axe into the pot. If the axe floats, you know the coffee is ready to drink. We eat a hearty breakfast, for there is a big day ahead. Then everyone pitches in to break camp. We wash the dishes, drop the tent, pack the bedrolls. That is, everybody works but old Tiger. He stayed awake all night listening to those hoot owls. And so we are off for another day of adventure, keeping an eye out for any wildlife we may see along the way. And there in a dead tree, with a fish breakfast in its talons, an osprey or fishhawk watches silently. In building the nest, the birds use the lichen called old man's beard, which much resembles Spanish moss. We round a bend into a beautiful stretch of water, and there in the willows see one of our rarer birds, an American egret, which is a visitor from the lowlands along the Mississippi, 50 miles to the east. There in the Mingo Wildlife Refuge is a rookery where many wading birds nest and raise their young. And so we come to the biggest spring of all, which has the prosaic name of Big Spring. But it is truly a big spring, the largest single outlet spring on our continent. with a flow of upwards of 850 million gallons of crystal water every day. It is interesting to think that this water has been pouring out here not for 100 or 1,000 years, but perhaps for 100 million years from great underground caverns where it is collected from a wide watershed. Wildflowers bloom in the rich soil around the spring like this jewelweed, a favorite of the hummingbird. And now as we cook breakfast beside the singing water and listen to the symphony of the birds, we realize summer is almost over, for we have come to the river whenever the opportunity has presented itself in an outdoor season that lasts from April through October. Mornings are cooler now than in midsummer, although not yet cool enough for frost. We hear the roar of the rapid, take a firm grip on our paddles, and plunge ahead with white foam splashing over the bow. Native rivermen run these rapids with their outboard-powered john boats with unerring skill, where a slight miscalculation could spell disaster. Once more we see the osprey flying its beat above our canoe and know that soon it will leave for the Southland. Now as we drift through the warm sunshine, we realize that fruits of autumn are ripening to furnish winter food for wildlife. Walnut and hickory nut and hazelnut, pawpaw and persimmon, bittersweet and black haw, and the scarlet wahoo, which folks over in the Smokies call hearts bustin' with love. We run our last big rapid, glad some riverman cut a hole in that log to let us through, hoping for a sight of doe and fawn drinking in the shallows, or a mink with her youngsters fishing along the bank. And so we drift into the sunset and the end of another season on our favorite canoe river, which now is forever yours.